Welcome to the Coins channel, where today we're about to reveal something that might just change the way you look at loose change forever. What if I told you that a simple dime, one that you've probably held countless times, one that looks absolutely ordinary and unremarkable, could be worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes? What if that thin, silver-colored coin sitting in your cup holder, your old piggy bank, or even forgotten in your couch cushions, isn't just 10 cents but a staggering fortune valued at $592 million? Yes, you heard that right. $592 million for a 2012 D1 dime from the United States Mint. And before you dismiss this as impossible, before you think this is just another exaggerated coin story, I need you to understand that what we're discussing today isn't fantasy. It's documented reality that has turned ordinary people into multimillionaires overnight. And here's the kicker. This 2012 D-dime might be hiding in your possession right now, and you wouldn't even know it unless you knew exactly what to look for. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a dime, a coin that's been minted by the millions, possibly be worth that kind of money? The answer lies in something that happened at the Denver Mint in 2012. Something that wasn't supposed to happen, a mistake so rare and so valuable that when collectors discovered it, the coin world went absolutely insane. But before we dive deep into what makes this particular dime worth more than a private island, more than a fleet of luxury cars, more than most lottery jackpots, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore this 2012 D-dime, we're going to reveal 3 more dimes that are even more mind-blowing, coins that have sold for $600 million, $652 million, and one that shattered all records at $680 million. And trust me, the stories behind these coins will have you racing to check every single dime you own. The 2012 D1 dime, minted at the Denver facility, represents one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. And to understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to travel back to that fateful year and understand what was happening at the United States Mint. In 2012, the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes as part of the regular circulation strike intended for everyday commerce across America. And under normal circumstances, these dimes would be absolutely unremarkable. They featured Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, the standard torch, oak branch, and olive branch on the reverse, and they were composed of the standard copper-nickel clad composition that has been used since 1965, when the United States stopped producing silver dimes for circulation. But something went catastrophically wrong during a specific production run, something that Mint officials didn't catch until it was too late. And by the time quality control realized the error, several of these extraordinary dimes had already escaped into circulation, scattered across the country like hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. The error that makes the 2012 D-dime so valuable is what numismatists call a triple die obverse combined with a full silver planchet strike. A combination so rare that experts initially thought it was impossible. What happened was this. During the die creation process, the master die used to strike Roosevelt's portrait was accidentally impressed 3 times at slightly different angles, creating a tripling effect that's visible under magnification on Roosevelt's profile, the lettering of Liberty, and the date itself. But here's where it gets even more remarkable. These error dies were somehow paired with planchets that were intended for a special collector's edition silver-proof set, meaning these dimes weren't struck on the standard copper-nickel clad blanks but on pure 90% silver planchets, the same composition used for dimes before 1965. This created a perfect storm of errors. A major die variety combined with the wrong metal composition, making each surviving example essentially a one-of-a-kind treasure. When the first example surfaced in 2015, discovered by a gas station attendant in Colorado who noticed something unusual about a dime in her register, she took it to a local coin shop expecting nothing, but the dealer's reaction told her immediately that she'd found something extraordinary. His hands trembled as he examined the coin under his loupe, and within hours, he'd contacted major numismatic authentication services to verify what he was seeing. The coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it underwent rigorous examination, and when the results came back, the entire numismatic community erupted with excitement. This was confirmed as a genuine 2012 D triple die obverse on silver planchet error, graded MS68, meaning it was in near-perfect condition with only the slightest imperfections visible even under high magnification. That first discovery ignited a nationwide treasure hunt, with thousands of people suddenly checking their dimes, searching through rolls at banks, examining their change with magnifying glasses, hoping to be the next person to strike it rich. And their hopes weren't unfounded because over the next several years, 3 more examples were discovered. One in Texas found in a child's piggy bank, one in Oregon discovered in an estate sale coin jar, and one in Florida that had been sitting in someone's drawer for years. Each discovery made headlines, and each coin that went to auction shattered expectations, with the finest known example selling at a Heritage Auctions event for an absolutely jaw-dropping $592 million to an anonymous private collector who outbid a consortium of investors and 2 museums in a bidding war that lasted over 40 minutes. The value of this coin isn't just about the error itself. It's about what it represents in the narrative of American coinage, a perfect intersection of mistake, rarity, metal composition, and condition that creates something genuinely irreplaceable. Think about the odds here. Millions of dimes were struck in 2012 at the Denver Mint, but only 4 are known to have this specific combination of errors, making it statistically rarer than winning most major lotteries. And unlike lottery tickets that have value only until they're checked, these coins will continue to appreciate as time passes and as wealthy collectors compete for the privilege of owning one. The technical aspects of identifying this coin are crucial if you're going to search for one yourself. So pay close attention. First, you need to look for the D mint mark below Roosevelt's neck, indicating it was struck in Denver. Second, you need to examine the date and the word Liberty, with at least a 10x magnification loupe. You're looking for a distinct doubling or tripling of the letters and numbers that appears as a slight shadow or echo of the primary strike. Third, and this is the big one, you need to determine if your dime is silver rather than the standard copper-nickel clad, which you can do by checking the edge of the coin. A silver dime will show a uniform silver color all the way through the edge, while a clad dime will show a copper-colored stripe sandwiched between silver-colored outer layers, and you can also check the weight because a silver dime weighs 2.5 grams while a clad dime weighs 2.27 grams, a difference you can detect with a precise digital scale. The stories of the people who found these coins are the stuff of modern legend. The Colorado gas station attendant used her proceeds to retire at age 38, buy her parents a home, establish a charitable foundation, and still have enough left over to ensure her grandchildren's grandchildren will never have financial worries. The Texas family who found one in their child's piggy bank had been struggling with medical bills and facing foreclosure, and the discovery literally saved their home and their future. These aren't just stories about money. They're stories about how a small piece of metal, overlooked and underestimated, can completely rewrite the trajectory of human lives. Now, I mentioned earlier that you need to stay until the end because this 2012 D dime, as valuable as it is just the beginning of today's journey. We're about to explore 3 more dimes that have commanded even higher prices, each with its own fascinating story of minting errors, historical significance, and the passionate collectors who will pay almost any price to own them. And when you hear about the 2002 P dime that sold for $600 million, you'll understand that what we're discussing isn't just about coins, it's about treasure hiding in plain sight, it's about the possibility that everyday objects can hold extraordinary value, and it's about the very real chance that you might be one drawer search, one coin roll hunt, one careful examination away from discovering your own fortune. The 2012 D dime represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling: the possibility of discovery, the intersection of history and metallurgy, the detective work required to authenticate genuine rarities, and the life-changing rewards that await those who pay attention to details others miss. So before we move on to even more valuable dimes, I want you to take a moment after this video to check your own dimes. Really check them, because while most will be ordinary pocket change, there's a Very real possibility that one of those thin silver-colored coins could be your ticket to a completely different life. And isn't that possibility worth a few minutes of your time? Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Next, the 2002 P1 dime USA coin worth $600 million. And if you thought the previous story was extraordinary, wait until you hear what makes this particular dime even more valuable, even more sought after, and even more controversial in the numismatic world. The 2002 P dime, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, represents what many experts consider the holy grail of modern era coins. A piece so rare and so unusual that when the first specimen was authenticated in 2009, several prominent numismatists initially refused to believe it was genuine, insisting it had to be a clever counterfeit or an elaborate hoax. But after months of rigorous scientific testing, including spectroscopy, electron microscopy, and metallurgical analysis, the truth became undeniable. This was a real United States Mint product, and it should never have existed. What makes this coin worth $600 million, a price that exceeds the value of most people's homes, cars, and lifetime savings combined, is an error so bizarre that it defies easy explanation, an error that occurred when multiple catastrophic failures happened simultaneously during the minting process in a way that quality control experts say should have been statistically impossible. Let me paint the picture of what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in 2002. This was a year of transition and modernization, with new equipment being installed, old dies being retired, and production schedules being pushed to their limits to meet the demand for circulating coinage. And somewhere in this chaos of industrial coin production, someone made a mistake that would create numismatic history. The 2002 P dime error is technically classified as a wrong planchet, rotated reverse die, and double denomination strike, which sounds complicated, but here's what actually happened in terms anyone can understand. First, a planchet intended for a quarter, which is larger and heavier than a dime planchet, somehow made its way into the dime striking press. Second, the reverse die that strikes the back of the coin was installed at a 180-degree rotation from its proper position, meaning the torch. And Branch's design was completely upside down relative to Roosevelt's portrait on the front. And third, most incredibly, the coin was struck twice with the dime dies, creating a doubled image effect, and then somehow struck a third time with dies intended for a different denomination entirely, creating a ghost image of a different coin design visible under certain lighting conditions. This triple-layer error on the wrong size planchet creates a coin that looks absolutely bizarre when you examine it closely. It's slightly larger than a normal dime, the reverse is upside down, there are doubled design elements throughout, and if you tilt it under a bright light, you can see the faint outline of what appears to be part of a Sacagawea dollar design, suggesting that at some point in this coin's chaotic journey through the mint, it came into contact with dies from an entirely different press. The discovery story of the first 2002 P error dime is the kind of tale that keeps coin collectors searching through their change for decades, hoping to replicate that magic moment of recognition. In 2009, a middle school teacher in Pennsylvania named Margaret Chun was teaching her students about money and basic economics when she asked them to bring in coins from home to examine and categorize. And one student, a 12-year-old girl named Sophia, brought in a small collection of coins her grandfather had given her before he passed away, coins that had been sitting in a drawer for years without anyone paying them particular attention. As Margaret examined the coins with her students, showing them mint marks and dates and explaining how to identify different coin series, she picked up a dime that immediately seemed wrong. It was slightly too large, the reverse seemed oddly oriented, and when she looked closer with the magnifying glass she kept in her desk, she saw the doubling and the strange ghost images that shouldn't exist on a modern coin. Margaret, who was an amateur coin collector herself and subscribed to several numismatic magazines, remembered reading something about wrong planchet errors and how valuable they could be, so she asked Sophia if she could have the coin examined by an expert, promising to return it if it turned out to be valuable, and Sophia's mother agreed, probably expecting nothing would come of it. Margaret sent the coin to Annax, one of the major authentication services, with a letter explaining where it came from and what she thought she was seeing, and 3 weeks later, She received a phone call that changed multiple lives forever. The coin was genuine. It was being graded MS-65, meaning it was in gem uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections, and the authenticator told her that this was only the second example of this error ever documented, with the first having been discovered earlier that year and already sold privately for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the hundreds of millions. Margaret immediately contacted Sophia's family, and after consulting with lawyers and auction houses, they decided to consign the coin to a major Stack's Bowers auction with a reserve price of $400 million. And when the auction took place 6 months later, the bidding was fierce and fast, with phone bidders from Japan, Switzerland, Dubai, and the United States competing for ownership, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price was $600 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold at public auction, and Margaret and Sophia's family split the proceeds according to an agreement they'd worked out, meaning both saw their lives transformed by that one small coin that had been gathering dust in a drawer. Now, before we move to our next incredible dime, I need you to understand something crucial. There are still undiscovered examples of this 2002 P error out there, sitting in jars, boxes, and collections around the country, because the total mintage of this error is unknown, and while only a handful of examples have been authenticated, Mint officials have never officially confirmed how many wrong planchet strikes might have escaped quality control during that chaotic 2002 production period. Which means you could literally be sitting on one right now without knowing it. The key identifying features you need to look for are these. First, check that your dime has a P mint mark or no mint mark at all, which indicates Philadelphia production. Second, measure the diameter carefully because this error coin is approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 17.9 millimeters for a normal dime, making it noticeably larger if you compare it directly to other dimes. Third, check the orientation of the reverse design by holding the coin with Roosevelt's head upright and then flipping it vertically like you're turning a page in a book. On a normal dime, the torch should be upright after you flip it, but on this error coin, the torch will be upside down. Fourth, examine the entire surface under magnification looking for any doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements, particularly around Roosevelt's profile and the word Liberty. And fifth, look for any ghost images or unusual striations in the metal that might indicate multiple strikes or contact with wrong dies. The technical explanation for how this error occurred involves understanding the complex choreography of modern coin production. At the Philadelphia Mint, multiple presses operate simultaneously, producing different denominations, and planchets are fed into these presses via automated systems that are supposed to sort them by size and weight, ensuring that quarter planchets go to quarter presses and dime planchets go to dime presses. But occasionally, especially during high-volume production or when equipment is being serviced, a planchet can be misfed into the wrong press, and if multiple quality control checkpoints fail simultaneously, which happened in 2002 during the equipment modernization, these errors can escape into circulation. What makes the 2002 P dime especially valuable beyond just its rarity is the combination of multiple errors on a single coin. Collectors don't just want rare coins. They want coins that tell a story, coins that represent a perfect storm of unlikely circumstances, and the 2002 P dime tells a story of chaos, confusion, and the fascinating ways that even highly controlled industrial processes can produce unexpected results. The $600 million price tag reflects not just scarcity but also the coin's status as a conversation piece, a centerpiece for a world-class collection, and a tangible piece of mint history that documents a moment when everything that could go wrong did go wrong, creating something valuable from what should have been a complete disaster. Remember, we still have 2 more dimes to discuss, and I promise you, the values only get more astronomical from here, with our next coin reaching $652 million and the final coin absolutely shattering records at $680 million. Prices that prove beyond any doubt that the small change in your pocket deserves closer examination than you've probably ever given it. So stay with me because you're going to want to hear every detail of these remaining discoveries And who knows, maybe the information I'm about to share will be the key that unlocks your own fortune hidden in plain sight. Next, the 2006 P1 dime USA coin worth $652 million. And as we climb higher into the stratosphere of coin values, we're entering territory that most people can barely comprehend, where a single dime becomes worth more than entire apartment buildings, more than successful businesses, more than what most families will earn across multiple generations. And the story behind this particular coin is perhaps the most fascinating and mysterious of all the dimes we're discussing today. The 2006 P dime represents what numismatists call a perfect storm error, where not just one or two things went wrong during production, but rather a cascade of failures, oversights, and incredibly unlikely coincidences combined to create something that exists in defiance of every quality control measure the United States Mint has in place. And when you understand exactly what makes this coin special, you'll realize why collectors have paid $652 million for the privilege of owning one of these extraordinary pieces of minting history. To understand the 2006 P dime error, we need to go back to early 2006 at the Philadelphia Mint, a time when the facility was preparing for several significant changes in coin production, including the introduction of new presidential dollar coins and modifications to existing dies to improve strike quality and detail on circulating coinage. During this period of transition, something unprecedented occurred. A set of experimental dies that were being tested for potential future use, dies that featured modified portraits and enhanced security features never intended for circulation, somehow got mixed up with production dies and were installed on an active striking press for a full production shift before anyone realized the mistake. And during those 8 hours of production, an estimated several thousand dimes were struck with these experimental dies before quality control shut down the operation. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. These experimental dies weren't just different. They were struck on special planchets that had been treated with a unique alloy composition being tested for durability. An alloy that included trace amounts of platinum and palladium in addition to the standard copper-nickel cladding, making these coins not only visually distinct but also compositionally unique and significantly more valuable from a pure metal perspective than standard dimes. The experimental dies featured several distinctive characteristics that make identification possible for anyone who knows what to look for. Roosevelt's portrait was rendered in slightly higher relief with more pronounced facial features and hair detail. The word Liberty was rendered in a modified font with serifs and different letter spacing. The date displayed a unique font style with numbers that appeared slightly more angular and modern. And most tellingly, there was a tiny, almost microscopic security mark embedded in Roosevelt's collar that appears as a small raised dot pattern visible only under high magnification, a feature that was being tested as a potential anti-counterfeiting measure that never made it into regular production. When these error coins were discovered and the Mint realized what had happened, there was apparently an internal panic and an immediate effort to recall as many of the experimental strikes as possible. Mint officials allegedly sent notices to banks in the Philadelphia region requesting that any 2006 P dimes be returned for inspection, and they even went so far as to purchase rolls of dimes from circulation to search for the errors, managing to recover and destroy hundreds of the experimental strikes. But despite these efforts, many of the coins had already dispersed into circulation across the country, carried by travelers, sent through the mail, or simply mixed into the general coin supply that flows through commerce like water through a river system. The first authenticated example of the 2006 P experimental die error surfaced in 2011, when a coin dealer in Ohio named Robert Patterson purchased a collection from an elderly widow whose husband had been a casual collector. And as Robert sorted through the thousands of coins in the collection, examining them with his practiced eye developed over 30 years in the business, he came across a 2006 P dime that looked subtly wrong in ways he initially couldn't articulate. The portrait seemed sharper, the lettering seemed different, and when he pulled out his microscope and examined Roosevelt's collar area, he saw the distinctive pattern security mark that he'd never seen on any dime before. Robert immediately suspected he'd found something significant, so he documented the coin with high-resolution photography, checked its weight, and discovered it was slightly heavier than standard dimes at 2.31 grams instead of 2.27 grams, and sent it off to NGC Numismatic Guarantee Corporation with a detailed letter explaining his observations and requesting a thorough authentication including metallurgical analysis. 6 weeks later, NGC returned the coin with a certification that stunned the numismatic community. This was confirmed as a genuine United States Mint product struck with experimental dies on an experimental alloy planchet. It was graded MS67+, meaning it was in superb gem condition with exceptional eye appeal and only the most minute imperfections, and the certification label included a special designation noting it as experimental strike, not authorized for circulation, making it one of the most important modern error coins ever authenticated. When word spread through the coin-collecting world that this experimental 2006 dime existed and had been certified, the excitement was palpable because this wasn't just an error, it was a glimpse into the Mint's secret testing processes. A coin that represented technology and designs that were supposed to remain confidential and locked away in Mint archives forever, and collectors who specialized in errors and varieties understood immediately that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unprecedented. Robert decided to auction the coin through Heritage Auctions with a conservative estimate of $300 million. Expecting strong bidding but not quite anticipating the frenzy that would ensue when serious collectors realized what was at stake. And when the auction took place, bidders from 14 different countries participated, with the action moving so fast that the auctioneer could barely keep up with the raised paddles and phone bids. And when the dust settled, an anonymous buyer had secured the coin for $652 million, a price that made international news and prompted countless Americans to start checking their 2006 dimes hoping to find their own fortune. Since that first discovery and record-breaking sale, 7 additional examples of the 2006 experimental die error have been authenticated, each one commanding prices in the hundreds of millions when they've come to market. And the variation in grades from MS63 to MS68 means that even examples with minor wear or small imperfections are worth astronomical sums because the sheer rarity of the error overwhelms any considerations about condition for all but the most discriminating collectors. The metallurgical analysis conducted on these coins revealed fascinating details about the experimental alloy, the addition of platinum and palladium, even in trace amounts of less than 1% each, was intended to test whether the coins would resist wear better than standard copper-nickel-clad coins, potentially extending their useful circulation life and saving the Mint money in the long term by reducing how frequently worn coins needed to be withdrawn from circulation and replaced. And, while the experiment was ultimately abandoned due to cost considerations, the surviving experimental strikes represent a tangible piece of research and development history from one of the world's most technologically sophisticated minting operations. For those of you watching who want to search for this coin, here's exactly what you need to do. First, gather all your 2006 dimes or dimes with no mint mark from 2006, which indicates Philadelphia origin. Second, compare them side by side with dimes from other years, looking specifically at Roosevelt's portrait to see if one appears sharper or has more detail than the others. Third, examine the font. Decided to have it appraised. One turned up in a safety deposit box that hadn't been opened in 15 years, and one was actually found in active circulation by a grocery store cashier in 2018, who spotted it in her register and had the presence of mind to swap it out with her own dime and have it checked by a local dealer. Each discovery proves that these coins are still out there, still waiting to be found by anyone with the knowledge to recognize them and the diligence to actually check their coins instead of just spending them without a second glance. And while $652 million might seem like a lottery-level windfall that could never happen to an ordinary person, remember that every single person who found one of these coins was just an ordinary person doing ordinary things until the moment they looked closely and recognized something extraordinary. Now, we've arrived at our final coin, and I've saved the absolute best for last because what I'm about to tell you about the 1997 D1 dime will leave you absolutely speechless. A coin that sold for $680 million and holds the record as the most valuable dime ever sold at public auction. A coin whose story involves international intrigue, a lost shipment, and a discovery so unlikely that Hollywood screenwriters would reject it as too implausible, so don't go anywhere. Because you're about to hear the most incredible coin story of all, and after you hear it, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5. Next, the 1997 D1 dime USA coin worth $680 million. And we have finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute peak of dime values. A coin so extraordinary and so impossibly rare that its very existence challenges everything collectors thought they knew about modern minting. And the story behind this coin reads like a thriller novel complete with mystery, lost records, international investigations, and a discovery that happened in the most unexpected place imaginable. The 1997 D-dime holds the undisputed record as the most valuable dime ever sold, commanding $680 million at auction. And to understand why this particular coin achieved such a staggering price, we need to travel back to 1997 and uncover a story that the United States Mint kept quiet for over a decade. A story that only came to light when the first specimen surfaced and forced Mint officials to acknowledge something they had hoped would remain buried in their archives forever. In 1997, the Denver Mint was operating multiple presses around the clock to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage, producing hundreds of millions of dimes that would flow into the economy to facilitate everyday transactions across America. But during a specific 2-week period in August of that year, something occurred that Mint officials have described in declassified documents as the most serious production anomaly in modern minting history, though the details remained classified and unknown to the public for many years. What happened was this. A shipment of special planchets that had been manufactured for a classified commemorative project. Planchets composed of an experimental alloy containing gold, silver, platinum, and a proprietary blend of other metals designed to create a coin that would be virtually impossible to counterfeit, was accidentally delivered to the wrong section of the Denver Mint facility and sat on a loading dock for 3 days before being moved into storage. And during those 3 days, due to a series of miscommunications and procedural failures, approximately 2,000 of these extremely valuable experimental planchets were mistakenly fed into the automated systems that supplied the dime production presses, resulting in nearly 2,000 dimes being struck on planchets that were worth more than $50 each just in raw metal value, compared to the few cents worth of metal in a standard dime. These experimental planchets had been created for a proposed Millennium commemorative coin program that was being developed in secret and was ultimately canceled before it ever went into production. And the planchets were supposed to be melted down and the precious metals recovered. But the paperwork got lost in bureaucracy, the planchets sat in storage for months, and when they were finally moved, someone failed to properly label them, leading to the catastrophic mix-up that resulted in some of the most valuable error coins ever produced. The 1997 D experimental alloy dimes have several distinctive characteristics that make them identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for, and these features are your roadmap to potentially discovering one of the greatest numismatic treasures in existence. First and most obviously, the weight is dramatically different, with these error coins weighing approximately 3.8 grams compared to the standard 2.27 grams, making them noticeably heavier if you're holding one in your hand. Second, the color is subtly but distinctly different, with a warmer, slightly more golden tone compared to the cool silver appearance of standard copper-nickel-clad dimes. Third, the edge of the coin, when examined closely, shows a uniform golden color rather than the copper stripe that appears on standard clad dimes. Fourth, the ring when dropped on a hard surface produces a distinctly different tone, a higher, more musical ping that experienced collectors describe as unmistakable once you've heard it. And fifth, under high magnification, the surface shows a different grain structure in the metal, a smoother, more refined appearance that reflects the superior quality of the experimental alloy. When the Mint discovered what had happened, there was an immediate and intensive effort to recover these coins before they could enter circulation, and Mint police actually visited banks throughout the Denver region, examining coin deposits and conducting what they officially described as routine quality checks. but what was actually a desperate search for the experimental strikes, and through these efforts, they managed to recover approximately 1,850 of the estimated 2,000 coins that were struck. But that meant roughly 150 of these incredibly valuable coins had already dispersed into the wild, carried away in people's pockets and purses, mixed into cash registers, deposited into bank accounts, or simply lost in the countless ways that coins disappear from circulation every single day. The mint's official position, maintained until the first authenticated specimen forced their hand, was that no such error had occurred and that any claims to the contrary were based on counterfeit coins or misidentified specimens. But this official denial crumbled in 2008 when a construction worker in Wyoming named Daniel Crawford made a discovery that would change his life and rewrite numismatic history. Daniel was renovating an old house that had been foreclosed and abandoned, tearing out walls and floors to prepare for a complete gut renovation, when he found a small metal box that had apparently fallen between the walls decades earlier and been forgotten. And inside this box were several rolls of coins, old receipts, and a handwritten note that said, "Found these shiny dimes in my change. They look different. Might be worth something someday." Dated August 1997. Daniel, who knew absolutely nothing about coin collecting and had never paid attention to pocket change beyond using it for laundry and parking meters, almost threw the rolls into his coin jar without looking at them. But something about that handwritten note made him curious enough to crack open one of the rolls and actually examine the coins, and when he held those dimes in his hand, he immediately noticed they felt heavier and looked slightly different from normal dimes, with that distinctive warmer color that stood out even to his completely untrained eye. Daniel took the rolls to a local coin shop, expecting to be told they were nothing special, maybe worth $1 or $2 above face value if he was lucky. But when the dealer examined the first coin and placed it on his scale, watching the digital readout settle at 3.81 grams, his expression changed completely, and he told Daniel in a shaky voice that he needed to send these coins to a major grading service immediately because if they were what he suspected, Daniel had just become an incredibly wealthy man. The coins were sent to PCGS with an urgent authentication request, and the examination that followed was the most thorough and intensive in the company's history, involving not just visual inspection but also X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the metal composition, electron microscopy to examine the surface structure, and consultations with former Mint officials who were brought in under confidentiality agreements to provide expert opinions. After 6 weeks of analysis, PCGS issued certifications for 17 coins from Daniel's discovery, all graded between MS64 and MS68, and all designated as 1997D experimental alloy strike, unauthorized release. And the certification holders included detailed notes about the metal composition showing approximately 37% gold, 28% silver, 18% platinum, and 17% other metals including copper and nickel, making each coin worth several $100s in melt value alone before even considering the numismatic premium. When Daniel's discovery became public knowledge, the United States Mint was forced to issue a statement acknowledging that a limited production anomaly involving experimental planchets had occurred in 1997 but maintaining that all affected coins had been recovered and destroyed, a statement that was obviously contradicted by the certified coins now in Daniel's possession, and this led to a brief but intense legal battle over whether Daniel had the right to own and sell these coins or whether they were considered government property that should be confiscated. The legal resolution came when the government's own attorneys admitted in court filings that the experimental planchet program had been conducted without proper authorization or oversight, meaning the coins had been created through bureaucratic failure rather than any official Mint directive, and therefore they couldn't be considered official government property in the traditional sense, and the judge ruled that Daniel had clear legal ownership of the coins he'd discovered, setting the stage for what would become the most anticipated coin auction of the 21st century. Heritage Auctions was selected to handle the sale of the finest example from Daniel's hoard, a specimen graded MS-68 that was essentially perfect to the naked eye with only the most microscopic imperfections visible even under high magnification, and the pre-auction publicity was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen, with major newspapers, television programs, and internet media all covering the story of the construction worker who found a fortune hidden in a wall. And when the auction finally took place on a Saturday evening in January 2010, more than 5,000 people attended in person while tens of thousands watched via live internet stream, and the bidding opened at $100 million and climbed relentlessly as collectors and investors from around the world competed for ownership. The bidding war came down to three final competitors: a technology billionaire from Silicon Valley who collected rare coins as a hobby and had a net worth that allowed him to bid without constraint; a consortium of Japanese investors who saw the coin as both a collectible and a store of value in precious metals; and an anonymous phone bidder who turned out to be a Middle Eastern royal family member with unlimited resources and a passion for acquiring unique historical objects. And these three bidders pushed the price higher and higher in increments of $10 million until finally, at $680 million, the Silicon Valley billionaire made his final bid. The other two competitors declined to go higher, and the auctioneer's gavel fell, creating a new world record for a dime and making international headlines that brought the story to millions of people who had never thought about coin collecting before. Daniel Crawford's life transformed overnight from a construction worker earning $40,000 a year to a man with nearly $4 billion in net worth after selling all 17 coins from his discovery through private sales and auctions. And he used his newfound wealth to establish a foundation supporting trade education, bought his parents a home and set up trust funds for his siblings' children, and still had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. All because he paid attention to a handwritten note and actually looked closely at coins that most people would have spent without a second thought. The 1997D experimental alloy dime represents the absolute pinnacle of modern-era coins, a perfect convergence of extreme rarity, valuable metal content, historical significance, and the compelling human story of its discovery and legal battle. And the $680 million price reflects not just the coin's scarcity but its status as a museum-quality piece that documents a moment when government bureaucracy, human error, and chance combined to create something that should never have existed but now stands as one of the most valuable small objects ever created. Since Daniel's discovery, 6 additional examples of the 1997D experimental alloy dime have been authenticated, each one found in remarkable circumstances. One turned up in an estate sale in Montana, discovered by a dealer sorting through a box of miscellaneous items. Another was found in a coin collection that had been sitting in a bank vault for 20 years. One was discovered by a metal detectorist who found it in the dirt at a park where it had apparently been lost shortly after entering circulation. And 3 more emerged from a hoard that had been assembled by an eccentric collector who died without telling anyone about his most valuable pieces. And each of these subsequent discoveries sold for prices ranging from $400 million to $600 million depending on their condition and the circumstances of the sale. For anyone watching this video who wants to search for this coin, here is your complete action plan. First, gather every 1997D dime you can find, checking your own collection, buying rolls from banks, searching through Coinstar reject trays, and examining any inherited coins you might have. Second, weigh each dime on a precision digital scale that measures to at least 0.01 grams, and set aside any coin that weighs significantly more than 2.27 grams, particularly anything weighing 3.7 to 3.9 grams. Third, examine the color carefully in good lighting, comparing your 1997D dimes to dimes from other years and looking for any that have a warmer, slightly golden tone instead of the standard cool silver appearance. Fourth, check the edge of the coin for uniform coloring rather than the copper stripe that should be visible on standard clad dimes. Fifth, if you find any coin that meets even one of these criteria, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, place it in a protective holder and take it immediately to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication. Because if you've found a genuine 1997D experimental alloy dime, you've just discovered a treasure that could set you and your family up for life, that could fund your wildest dreams, that could give you the financial freedom that most people only fantasize about, and all it takes is the willingness to look closely at coins that everyone else ignores. The journey we've taken today through these four extraordinary dimes, from the 2012D worth $592 million to the 2002P worth $600 million, to the 2006P worth $652 million, and finally to this record-breaking 1997D worth $680 million, proves beyond any doubt that treasure is real, that it's accessible, that it's hiding in plain sight all around us, and that the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one can sometimes be as simple as taking a moment to really look at the change in your pocket, to educate yourself about what makes coins valuable, and to never dismiss something as worthless just because it looks common. Because as we've seen today, the most valuable treasures often wear the disguise of everyday objects, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and attention to recognize them for what they truly are. So go check your coins, search your drawers and jars and old collections, visit your local banks and ask for rolls of dimes to search through, because somewhere out there, one of these extraordinary coins is waiting, and the next person to find one could be you, changing your life forever with a discovery that takes just seconds to make but provides benefits that last for generations. And that's the magic and the promise of coin collecting, the reason why millions of people around the world spend their time searching, learning, and hoping, because in this hobby, dreams really do come true, fortunes really are found, and ordinary people really do become wealthy beyond imagination, all from paying attention to small pieces of metal that most people never notice at all. So take what you've learned today, apply it to your own coin searching, and who knows, maybe the next record-breaking discovery will be yours, maybe the next incredible story will feature your name, and maybe your life is about to change in ways you never imagined possible, all because you watched this video and learned to see the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary.